Hello guys, this is Jerry speaking. Welcome to LJPCBM React, episode number 532. And today we're reacting to Purple Roads, episode number 52. And we're reacting to this beginning in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
I'm Carrie Stinson, and my journey through life has been quite an adventure. For over 20 years, I played Barney the Dinosaur on tour and 7 seasons of the hugely popular TV show Barney and Friends. Now my journey is to bring together friends and guests from all over the entertainment world for inspiring and at times amusing behind-the-scenes conversation. I'm Carrie Stinson, and this is Purple Roads.
Wow.
Welcome to Purple Roads. We're going to have a lot of fun this week. There's a lot of memories that are going to come back to you. We have, from Monsters, Inc., Mary Gibbs. How are you, Mary?
Wow.
I'm so good. How are you?
Good. I know. I've been telling people all week about the fact that you're going to be on this show, and I mentioned your character, Boo, and they just get so excited.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so thrilled for you to be on this week, and we can talk all about it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
There's so many places I want to go with this. I guess why don't you start off with how you got that role and how you got into that movie?
Yeah. So I was only 2.5 to 3.5 when I did the voice, and
Wow.
normally they have like 20-year-olds or older people at least do kids voices, and so that's always the first question. And my dad, he worked at Disney and Pixar for over 30 years, around 30 years, and he was just in the right meeting at the right time. And so he was a storyboard artist, so this is like very early phases of the movie. And they originally just needed a little girl to draw, and so my dad brought me in, and my mom would put my hair in pigtails, and they would always sketch me in pigtails, and that's one of the reasons Boo has pigtails actually, because they would always sketch me with pigtails. And so that's where it started. And then as the movie progressed, they needed someone for scratch dialogue. So again, just really rough. It wasn't going to be for the full movie. But as the movie progressed, they're like, well, she's doing great. Let's use her for the whole thing. So yeah, it was all thanks to my dad being a storyboard artist there. And yeah, pretty much just walking around with a microphone. And
I want to talk about all that. So how many movies was your dad involved with?
So his first animated movie he worked on professionally was actually Cool World, which I
wow.
like a hold on. Animated and live action kind of deal.
Michael Kevin recorded that movie. I've seen bits and pieces of Cool World. Continue on.
And then from there he went to Disney and he worked on Pocahontas. He worked on Bug's Life and Toy Story and Nemo and Wall-E and Monsters Inc. and Cars. He directed Mater's Tall Tales, which was a series of shorts on Disney Channel.
Which I've never seen. But yeah, continue on.
He's kind of had his hands in a lot of different Pixar movies.
Wow.
When did you realize how cool your dad was? You probably always thought your dad was cool, but how cool it was when you found out what his job was, or understood what his job was.
The coolest thing for me, he would bring me into Pixar, so that was the best, bring your daughter to work day. You could ride scooters around the complex, and they had this big parade. I would just, everyone at Pixar working are just like big kids, but for me to be like a real little kid, being able to explore this place, it was pretty cool. But what I loved, my dad, once a year growing up in elementary school, and he would come in and do drawing lessons for everybody, and when everyone's shouting out whatever movie, I don't know what was out then, draw Heimlich or draw something like that, then actually being able to see him do that, I think that's when I was like, wow, super cool dad. For sure.
Are you an artist?
I definitely love to draw. My dad, he was more of off the top of his head, he could think of stories, he could think of characters, and he could just draw that. Me, I'm more of I'll look at something and be able to draw it. But I do more music stuff, so artist in different ways. But, yeah.
So, do you even remember at part of that?
Yeah, I definitely wish I had more vivid memories. I have like little flashes. So again, 2.5 to 3.5 is when I was actually in the recording studio, and I remember like the walls had that sound absorbing foam on it, and they were like pyramids, like a bunch of pyramids. Anyway, I just remember like rolling over the walls and like thinking it was hilarious that the walls were like made out of pillows. That was my 3-year-old brain.
Wow.
So I remember little things like that. Pete Doctor, the director, when he needed me to say something, he would oftentimes use a Cookie Monster puppet to talk to me. Like,
Wow.
what would you say if you lost your cat? And I'd say kitty, like really sad. And so I kind of remember him using the puppet with me. But I was 5 years old in 2001 when the movie actually came out, and so I have more memories of that. I remember like Billy Crystal walking me down the red carpet, and I just learned how to write my name, but I remember like taking 5 minutes to sign each autograph at the premiere party, and so yeah, little flashes here and there.
So they put you in a sound booth, right? But my understanding is, didn't you move around a lot and they kind of just had to follow you?
Yeah. So I definitely was in a recording booth, but the sound guys had to get pretty crafty because it was realized pretty early on that I wasn't just gonna sit still and say lines.
Right.
So they attached the microphone to the boom, and without making any extra noise, they're probably like tiptoeing around in their socks behind me. They're catching all my little noises, which definitely I think made Boo so lovable. I mean, because she was an authentic little girl. Like those are all natural little noises and stuff. So
Wow.
It's what I love about it so much. Here in our household, we love the movie. We watched it actually not too long ago again, and I think it is the authenticity that what makes that so cool. To find out that it was actually a 2.5-year-old that did that is so awesome.
thank you. Yeah, it's definitely cool to be a part of it for sure.
So
Especially
what is it?
without.
I'm sorry. So what has it been like for you now, getting older, and realizing the impact that you've had and that character's had?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's pretty crazy to think about. Like a lot of the times, a movie will be popular for a year and then
Wow.
kind of like fall off. But the fact that it's been like 20 years later and Monsters Inc. is still such a love movie. I think I really see the impact now. Like a couple years ago, Celebworks, my managers, they've reached out to me, and they manage a bunch of other people as well. And they set up Comic-Cons for me, and so like every couple
Wow.
months, obviously not when the pandemic's happening, but I'll travel around to different Comic-Cons and get to meet people. And I think really like that's kind of helped it sink in, like how much of an impact this has had on people. Because I mean, like grandparents will love Boo because they remember showing their grandkids, and people my age love Boo because they grew up with it, and like people my age are now showing their kids the movie. So it's like it's staying alive, which is cool to see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really brilliant, the whole aspect of it. So as you got older, you started realizing that the other characters were John Goodman and Billy Crystal. How cool was that?
I know, that's definitely cool, and I think like one of the most frequently asked questions I get is like, do you still hang out with Billy Crystal and John Goodman? Like, I wish. Billy Crystal did tweet about me when I was like turned 20. He was like, "Who's a 20-year-old yoga instructor?" I was like,
wow.
Thanks, Billy Crystal. But yeah, I mean, it's super cool to see like just how amazing of actors they are, and just everyone in that movie. There's a lot of good names that I was able to meet, even though I was so young. But just knowing that I was in a movie with them, it's pretty incredible. For sure.
What has it been like doing these Comic-Cons and actually meeting the fans? I know you touched about it a little bit, but what has it been like for you? We talk a lot about on this show about the authenticity. We talk about how these characters really touch people. Did it kind of really, I know you mentioned this a little bit, but did it really set in that you've affected what you did affected people's lives?
Yeah, there's one girl that like comes to mind. I forget like the details of her story, but I remember her, and I remember her talking to me, and she was just saying that she was going through like a really big depression and really like hard time in her life, and Monsters Inc. and whatever lesson she was able to like draw from that really like helped her overcome that. And like I I've had a couple of stories like that where it's like really can see the impact of that movie on someone, and just to like be able to like look people in their eyes that are telling me that story, and like know that my little 3-year-old voice helped in some way is it's definitely it's a cool feeling.
What was it like being at that premiere? I know you mentioned Billy Crystal, and you probably didn't understand the whole concept there.
Yeah,
but
like I'm
a
trying
movie with that many people.
Yeah, I remember like I don't know. I think like from the beginning, like even when I was like 3 years old and my mom brought me into that the big recording studio to be like, oh, this is the test, and she could actually like work in it. I just kind of walked in and like acted like I've like done it before, And so I think even then, like when I was 5 for the premiere party, it was just like I don't know. I think part of it was probably I was just naive. Like I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just like, oh wow, all these people are taking pictures of me. Like, I don't know. But I do remember like one specific moment at the premiere party, because voice actors, they don't actually, at least nowadays, they don't interact in the booths. Like everyone
Right.
everything's separate. But the first time, I'm pretty sure this is the first time that I actually met Billy Crystal. I've heard his voice. Obviously, I've seen the movie at this point. But he comes up behind me, and in his Mike Wazowski voice, he goes, "Boo!" And I turn around, and I'm like, "Mike Wazowski!" And there's a million pictures taken of that moment. And so I think it was just a really cool experience. I remember once, like, I have all these like random flashbacks of memories, and like I wrote Mary Gibbs on everyone's autographs, and there's one girl who was like my age who went to the premiere with me, and she's the one person I wrote Mary Gibbs boo. So if you find her, that autograph might be worth something. But yeah, so like again, just little memories like that. But it was definitely it was a cool experience. There's a bunch of if you Google my name, you could see Billy Crystal holding me down, like walking me down the red carpet, and yeah, not many people can say that for sure.
No. So watching the movie, does that bring back any memories for you?
Yeah, so I was actually
the process when you're watching it.
Yeah, I haven't. So I've watched it about a million times, but it's been like a few years since I watched it, and I just rewatched it for the first time like with my managers just a few weeks ago, and I remember like watching it. And one of the questions one of my managers asked me was like, "Are you able to disassociate yourself like from can you watch Monsters Inc. and just think like, oh, this is a good movie, or is it like and I don't know. It's kind of when I hear it, it's like it's definitely hard to like I know this wasn't the same question, but I'll get into it if it jogs any memories. But, yeah, it's like it's weird when I watch the movie because it's like you can't really disassociate yourself from the character. It's just it's pretty real, like thinking about it. I definitely know like during all the crying scenes, I know how those happen. So like a crying scene will happen in the movie. I'm like, oh yeah, that's that was that. Like a couple of the scenes like I was running around and I had change in my pocket, and that's not okay in a recording booth. You can't have extra noise. So they just took the change away from me, like no like bad intentions, and that was a huge crying scene for sure. That also happened with candy in my pocket. But the big crying scene, and this is like where I get the memories of the most. The big crying scene where all the lights like flash out, and she's in Mike and Sully's apartment. My mom was actually trying to make me go. It was for the door scenes, and she was trying to make me go, and she threw me up and tried to make me laugh. And when she caught me, her fingernail just like sliced my gum. Like she just slipped. Not my mom's fault. But yeah, this big like the big huge cry, and I'm like, mommy, and like she's like, they're like, no, she can't say mommy. There's no mommies in Monsters Inc. And like my mom's trying to hold me away from her so like all the sound doesn't get muffled. But yeah, made for a good scene. But that's like definitely the little memories like that come to me throughout the movie.
So your mom was obviously involved.
Yeah. So my mom was definitely in the recording studio with me, and yeah, she definitely helped like keep me on track, I'm sure.
Well, as much as you can. I think that's the part that's fascinating. I mean, obviously, I worked on Barney and Friends for 12 years, so obviously I worked with children, so I understand that, and it's hard. Like a lot of times they're going to do whatever they're going to do, and I presume that's exactly what was happening with you. But I mean, you're going to cry, you're going to do. I mean, you're 2.5.
Yeah.
Avengers.
And that goes back to like the authenticity, you know. That's what makes it.
Well, that's what I think is so fascinating about this, because obviously they could have hired an adult, but I think doing it the way that they did it, and I mean, boy, that just hit about the time that Pixar, and I mean that movie, it's going to be around forever.
Forever.
I think it's so fascinating. When you're talking about watching it back, it's hard for me to watch back stuff that I've done before. You're critical, but you were 2.5. You can't, is that a crazy thing? Because you can't critique yourself, right? You can't be mad at yourself for something you did.
Like, well, that's weird. My voice is on a ride at Disneyland. How odd.
So let's talk about that. Where all did this go from there? I mean, video games and rides and all kinds.
Yeah, they well, just Monsters Inc. related. They've used my voice on the ride at Disneyland, and then for video games, then the most recent was Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, and they have a whole scare floor Monsters Inc. section, and they just reused my voice, so obviously I don't have to go re-record. But so they also, they have my voice in the vaults like 2.5 to 3.5, and so when they've needed another like a little baby's like laugh or cry, they'll be like, oh yeah, we have that girl from 2001, and like so they reused me. I was Baby Riley in Inside Out, all of her little like laughs and cries, and Baby Nala in Lion King 1.5, and like some other baby in Mulan 2, and so like random little like laughs and cries of mine are sprinkled throughout Disney.
So what do you think about that?
It's it's definitely like also surreal. I mean, the biggest chunk of my voice was for Baby Riley, where I actually like got credit for that. The other ones are just kind of like little, here and there. But yeah, I mean, it's really cool to just not even have to go and re-record anything. It's just like, oh, it's already done. Okay, yeah, you could use that. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
well, I mean, as you mentioned, how authentic it is. I mean, how do you? It's perfect to keep using it. Obviously, they did something very special.
Yeah, they have a ton of not footage, but audio clips of me. So yeah, no, it's cool that they reuse it. I still want to play Kingdom Hearts 3. I've yet to play it though, but apparently there's a good Monsters Inc. section.
Wow.
Would that be strange? Playing something?
It's just like, I don't know, surreal is like the best word. I just keep using it, but it's just like, I'm sure it's something similar like when you watch things that you're in, it's like, whoa, that was me.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's, I was in the costume, so no one knows my face, and that would be the same with you in a lot of cases. So when people find out, what are the reactions they have?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've definitely had a wide range of reactions. Some people, it's from like this end of like, oh, I've never seen that movie. I'm like, okay, cool. Well,
wow.
To like all of people, like I've had people cry. I think my favorite is like, when I meet people, I'm not like, hey, I'm Mary Gibbs, I'm the voice of Boo. But so the best thing is like when I meet people and like they're friends with me for a while, and then like they find out somehow, and it's like, that's always fun, and it like blows their mind a little bit more. I think at like one of my Comic-Cons, I have a guest badge, like it says I'm a guest, and I was washing my hands in the bathroom, and my name tag was facing me, and this girl was next to me, and she's kind of like looking at me weird and like trying to see who I was, I guess, and like she asked me to flip over my name tag, and when I did, she literally just started crying. So I've had definitely a wide range of reactions, but it's always best when they don't know at first, and then they find out later. Unless it's at a Comic-Con where they already.
Sure. Yeah, same thing. I obviously didn't. I mean, now I'm doing this and I'm out there, but beforehand, I didn't tell very many people. And then, what you used to do, and you explain. The TV, and then they start figuring it out, and they're like, oh my, and it's got to be the same thing for you, because that movie, I mean, it's iconic.
Wow.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, just like Barney Monsters Inc. are two childhood classics. It's definitely cool to be a part of something so memorable.
What are some of your favorite questions you've been asked?
Let's see. I mean, people always ask me if I could still do the voice. I'm like, well, puberty happened, unfortunately. Can't do that one. Let's see. Favorite questions I've been asked.
Not to put you on the spot or anything like like that. Was there one you can think of that?
Yeah, I mean, no. Normally, I'm asked a lot of like the same questions, which is totally good. I love that. But I think like, let's see. I think I've never been asked what you've asked me though. It was like what memories come up like while I'm watching the movie. That was a unique one. I know you've already asked me that one, but I was like, I've never been asked that before. Yeah, I'll stay tuned. Let me think.
Come on, think for a while.
I'm studying for a biology exam today, so my brain's a little all over the place.
So we will want to get into that.
Yeah.
So is this the only thing you've ever done in the voiceover work, or have you done anything else?
So I right when I was 5 and the movie got released, apparently a lot of people, like a lot of companies, still thought I was like 2.5 to 3.5, just because the movie came out. They thought I was the same age anyway.
Right.
A lot of people like reached out to my mom, and especially they wanted me to be Pebbles in the Flintstones. Is that the little?
Oh, gee. Pebbles? The Flintstones. Okay. I wonder. Continue on.
Like they wanted me to be that. But then they found out I was like past the age that they thought.
Okay.
The next like big one that I almost got was in Santa Claus 2 with Tim Allen. He has a niece in that movie, and I auditioned and I got the part, but then they found out a 5-year-old can't work as many hours as a 7-year-old, and so.
Yeah, Lillian, mommy, she was so adorable, and she was an actress. So continue on.
There were some things like that, and then like it just kind of my mom like pulled me out of it, like didn't want me to be like Lindsay Lohan or which was good. But then like now that I'm like getting back into Comic Cons, I was kind of thinking like, oh, it might be I'm meeting all these voice actors, and like I don't want to like be constantly searching for a role. Like I met one of the Blue Power Rangers, and he was telling me how he got his role, and he said he walked into like 950 auditions and was told no 950 times, but that next time he was told yes, and like that's what got him. I'm like, yeah, I'm more of a like if something comes into my lap, I'll do that, And so I met a couple people at Comic Con.
Wow.
Andrew Nelson is one of them. He wore the costume for Darth Vader. In Star Wars, some of the movies, and then was Darth Vader's voice in some video games. Then Jerry also he does like videos for Theme Parkology, which is like Disney rides and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they're working on an audio show called Heroes of Extinction, and that's about a hero or a superhero who, as he's getting older, he's losing his powers, and he's looking for a sidekick. And that's so again, it's an audio show, but they reached out to me and they're like, how would you want to like dip your toes back into voice acting with this? And I thought that was like a perfect way to like test the waters, see if it's for me. And so we recorded 2 episodes so far, but then like the pandemic and everything kind of like put things on hold.
Yeah. Horrible. It was pandemic. Yeah. Same way with the tragic legacy for Jim Lair. Continue on.
He just texted me today actually and said he's almost done editing episode 1. So
yeah.
That'll be just grabbing my computer charger. But that'll be like my first little taste back into voice acting, and which I think is good. It's with people that I know. It's not in like a big, scary like recording studio with like a billion people. I actually got to record in the studio that used to belong to the voice of Disneyland, which was cool. Like who says, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. So I got to like go in an actual recording booth, which was cool. But yeah, so we'll see. I'll see how episode 1 turns out and see how I sound. And we'll go from there.
So what was that like for you? All of a sudden now you're an adult. Were you nervous getting in the booth?
Yeah, I was definitely nervous. I definitely realized it's a lot harder voice acting than it seems, especially when you're not like 3 years old and don't know what you're doing.
Right.
Because it's just you're just talking to a microphone. You can't you just conjure the emotion out of thin air. Luckily, my friend Josh, he was there, directed me, and it helps that I was again, I'm comfortable and familiar with these people, and so it made it easier for me to mess around and kind of figure out what works. So I mean, it was definitely nerve wracking, definitely scary, but yeah, hopefully it gets easier. And the scenario that I was in made it okay.
Do you just let go what you did in the? I'm just wondering if there's pressure knowing what you did in the past. I mean,
well,
yes,
yeah,
you were 2.5, but wow.
I know that's true. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely even even when he texted me oh, episode 1's done, you're sounding good, whatever. But I was oh, yeah. I mean, true. It is in the back of my head, okay, people expect that I could voice act. People think I was some child prodigy, I'm no, I literally just my dad was in the right meeting, I wasn't some big child actor. I wasn't trained in voice acting. In 6th grade, I mean, I loved musical theater growing up, but in 6th grade, they made us audition in front of all the 8th graders, and I froze up and I cried, and that was the last audition I did. So yeah, I mean, there is some there's a little bit of pressure. Yeah, people think that you should be a good voice actor, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see how episode 1 turns out, and then
Wow.
we'll see. But yeah, the pressure's definitely there.
Do you have favorite moments when you watch Monsters Inc? Maybe
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be ones that you were in, but are there ones also scenes that you were in?
One of my favorite scenes. I know my dad worked on this one a lot. It was with the Yeti.
Wow.
When I didn't necessarily like that they were banished, but I just like the whole Yeti scene. I think the Yeti is one of my favorite characters. My dad came up with the gag of the yellow snow cones, or I forget exactly the line or what it is, but it's something about a yellow snow cone. And so I remember.
Hey, I brought my snow cones. Continue on, folks.
I remember my dad actually kind of working on that. So yeah, that was a cool scene, and it always made me sad though when they left him and he was snow cones, and the look on his face, I'm oh, so sad. But anyway, I love that. And actually, my favorite character was Randall growing up, because I always liked characters that nobody else did for some reason. I'm overly sensitive kid. And yeah, but I think like I said, I just kind of rewatched Monsters Inc. For the first time in a few years, and I was actually joking with my manager because I kind of forgot kind of forgot how the storyline went, but it's a really the whole thing is just a really well thought out movie, and especially early on, Pixar was making some really awesome movies. They've kind of slowly declined in the past couple years, but that was in their height of really putting a lot of effort into a movie. Oh, and also knowing that the big scene when all the monsters come in slow motion, and Sully's hair, they zoom up, and his hair is in slow motion. That was actually a big breakthrough in 3D animation, getting all the hairs. So that was I don't know, just kind of knowing little things like that is cool when I watch it.
Well, it's amazing. I remember that time when every movie Pixar did. I mean, they were just hitting them out of the ballpark. Obviously, the pressure and everything going on is crazy. But I know we've seen several of their movies. They've really, it's amazing what they do. Do you have other favorite movies that your dad worked on with Pixar?
Yeah, so I think my favorite one that he worked on was WALL-E. And
Wow.
that was because it was during the time I was in middle school. During that time, and Pixar takes 6 years to work on a movie, and especially the storyboard artists, they really I think they work on the movie the longest because they're trying to figure out all the little nuances and jokes and camera angles and everything before they spend a ton of money computer animating it.
Right.
So he worked on WALL-E for a long time, and that's the movie that I remember hearing about the progression the most. It started out, they weren't going to be humans in space. They were supposed to be these big blob aliens. They were going to be big green blobs, and they didn't even speak English. And you're supposed to understand what they said based on context clues. And so I remember hearing that and being I don't think that's going to make a very good movie. But just being able to hear all the little steps along the way, and then actually being able to see the movie in full production, and really being able to remember that process just because of the age that I was at. I think that was definitely my favorite. It's really cool to see that.
Well, and you've got to even think about if you pitch the idea of what Monsters Inc. and and what it turned out to be. You know, you start talking about these monsters at the doors and scaring and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, this is not a kids movie.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's such a brilliant kids movie.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think like on Rotten Tomatoes or whatever. I don't know. Was Rotten Tomatoes around then? Anyway, on some whatever reviews. No. Well, the review, anyway, when the movie was reviewed, that was the one thing that it was like the negative thing about it was like it was definitely scary for some kids, you know. But I mean, overall, yeah, it was definitely a good kids movie, obviously.
Do you remember, were you scared when you, let's say, do you remember when you were 5 watching it, or when you were still a kid watching it? Did it scare you?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think I watched it so many times, so I don't have any memories of being scared. But like when I rewatched it, I know like obviously when like Sully does that big roar, and Boo like goes and hides under the equipment or whatever. Like I'm sure I definitely got scared. But again I just watched it so many times where it was like I know it's happening. But yeah.
So what is your parents' reaction been that people are still asking you about this all these years later?
Yeah, I mean, my mom's definitely like super blown away with the fact that I'm like going to Comic Cons and it's still like riding the wave essentially like 20 years later and like, just I mean I've already said this before, but just the fact that it's like a lot of movies they'll kind of die off after a year, but
right.
What are the odds that like I'd be a part of a movie that just like is timeless? It's
Man.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, yeah, it's definitely when my mom said yes to this when I was like 2 years old, she had no idea it was gonna have this effect on my life, so it's just it's really cool to see. It's cool to see that I could still go to Comic Cons and like video games are still coming out with Monsters Inc. and it's just staying alive.
Do you know, was she hesitant for you to be in the movie?
That's a good question that I need to ask her. I think like from what I recall, I think she like didn't have hesitation just because she didn't think like Pixar wasn't the big studio it was today. Like they were in a little brick building in Richmond. Like I don't know if she thought it was gonna like blow up like it did. So there probably wasn't as much reservation. I mean, she knew my dad obviously the people that he worked with, and I think like it was a comfortable, familiar environment. It wasn't like I was going to try out audition for all these like other studios. So yeah, I'll definitely. That's a good question for her. But from what I remember her saying, it was just like she just didn't think it was gonna be so big. So it was like okay, yeah, you could do this.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I mean you've got Billy Crystal and John Goodman, but
yeah, that's true.
But you put it in a I don't, and I'm trying to remember the time period, but I don't remember. That's kind of when celebrities were being in these movies. I think that's when they were still a little bit smaller back then, a little bit.
Wow.
Doing those things that now.
As you heard Trey in the background, continue on.
Celebrities in all of these.
Yeah.
But
I know the one hesitation my mom had is because at first, they brought me in for scratch dialogue, like I said, and just to draw me, and that was at the little studio in Richmond, so that was super small and everything was fine. But then when they said like, oh, let's actually see if we can use her for the real movie, they were gonna have to take her to a different studio. I know my mom said when we went to that other studio and she walked in and she just saw a whole crew of people and she was like, is this all for my daughter? And they're like,
wow.
Yeah. And I think that was the moment I remember my mom saying where she was like, is she gonna be able to do this? Is she gonna freeze? Again, like I'm not a trained voice actress. Like I know some like hesitation definitely came up for her then, but I guess I just like walked in like I knew what I was doing. I don't know, but it all worked out.
Do you have any idea how many days it took to record what you did?
I know. I've been just told all my life that it was a year from 2.5 to 3.5.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't know like how often during that year I was brought in, but I know it was a whole year of my life.
Well, I know it's got to be fascinating to people when you're explaining some of these things. That I just don't think they realize how long it takes. That you were 2.5, but you were 5 when it went out. It took a year.
And like people don't realize that it takes like I mean, especially in the early days of Pixar, it would take like, within more than 4, but less than 8, like around 6 years to like make a movie, probably a little bit more. And yeah, which makes sense. Again, I was 2.5, then it came out in 2001 when I was 5. So yeah, people definitely don't realize that, like, especially even though like the Flintstones company that reached out, they were like, okay,
Yeah.
2.5, right?
Right.
But yeah, it definitely takes a long time to make a movie that's so good and groundbreaking, and all those things that Pixar strives for. So.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know your dad working on the storyboard? I'm presuming he worked on Boo as well.
Yes.
Was that strange for him to?
Yeah, no, I'm sure it was super strange. Like, yeah, like drawing your daughter's voice. Like, oh, he said the weirdest thing was when he would walk through like the editing when they were after the movie was in computer animation and like they're editing, and he would just hear my voice and like my screams and my cries like throughout the building. And he's like, I hear enough of this at home. Like, but yeah, my dad he passed away in April. But I got a original storyboard of his.
Wow.
Wow.
Running around my own.
Wow.
That was so cute of that Boo character. Especially you, Mary. Continue on.
So I've always wanted a Monsters Inc. tattoo, and this was a perfect way to commemorate too.
Wow.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I think it had to have been for both of them. I'm guessing. There's one thing, right, to audition your daughter, but then she gets it, and then
Yeah.
it's now what do we get ourselves into?
Yeah. I'm sure. And I think it was like, it probably really clicked with my mom. She was probably like, yeah, no worries, it's a small little studio. And then again, I think it clicked when she walked into that big studio with the whole crew, and she's like, wow, this is like really something. And like, yeah, to know like, Billy Crystal and John Goodman are gonna be a part of it. Like, yeah, definitely would
Wow.
be good to know exactly what was going on in her mind.
Now, did you work with them? I know you were 2.5, but were they part of that at that point, or was it all recorded separately?
Yeah. From what I remember, the first time I actually met them was during the premiere party.
Oh, okay.
From what I remember, I feel like we probably would have met some, but we don't do the work together and like in the booth together or anything. So that's all.
Wow.
Really. It used to be a lot like the voice actors used to all get in a booth together, which when I did that voice acting like the Heroes of Extinction, made me realize that would probably be a lot easier, actually interacting with someone and like, being able to feed off each other. But yeah. Sorry, my phone keeps ringing.
No. It's been the fun part doing these, unfortunately with COVID, but there's all kinds. I've had dogs walk through all kinds of things.
The Zoom call.
Yeah, it makes it fun. Yeah, when we recorded, when we did Barney and Friends, all the voices were together.
Wow.
They were all in booths next to each other. So.
Wow.
So like it's your own booth, but you could hear them all.
So for me, I would have earphones, obviously, in the costume, and then they each had their own booth. We would use 4 cameras, so it would be a quad split, so they could watch all the different cameras and see where we're going to go and what is going to go on. And I know it's really now it has gotten to such an individual recording people.
Yeah, which I wonder why. I mean, I remember talking to some voice actor at one of my Comic-Cons that they said like there was a lot of like feedback noise, and it was hard to like, if one person talked over the other person, you can't necessarily cut one line if one line was said better, and they can't like splice it as easy. But I don't know. In the long run, it seems like it would make things easier, at least for the voice actors, not the actors.
I'm really wondering. I know there's a mix of this where sometimes they draw the character and they're having the voice actor match. And in this case, I'm curious, and I don't know if you know this question, but they answer this question. But did they basically record you and then have to draw all this to kind of, because it probably, you have an idea of what they want you to say, but are you able to get every line that they wanted?
Yeah, what I think. Okay, so as far as I know, from like the movie making process is like the script's written, and then the storyboard artists come in, and they literally like thousands of drawings will be like, this is the camera angle, this is what's going to be said. Like they modify the script, like, okay, this joke fits better here.
Right.
And so all like the little everything that they want in the movie is figured out before it goes into computer animation, because like that's where all it costs a lot of money. And so, and I know like again they started bringing me in when they just like were wanting to draw me, but I think the voice recording phase happens like after the storyboards are done, when they know everything that they want to be said. Harry, that's my mom. Let me. So I think it's like after the storyboards are done, maybe like while it's being computer animated is when like the voice, because I know like they kind of already know what they want to be said.
Sure.
It's not like I think they already have my voice before it's like the mouth is computer animated. You know what I mean? And so I think like from what I can like recall from what I've heard. So yeah, I know they didn't like, you know, it's not like I don't know. That's a good question.
And then does your mom have any funny stories that she remembers, things you did when you were recording?
Let's see. I mean, besides from just like, you know, running around and like being a 3-year-old, I have to do like an interview with her and me, because I'm sure she'd have a lot of good input from her side, you know. Yeah, and she probably just like would laugh about all her unintentional making me cry, and like
Wow.
that was a big memorable story for us. But yeah.
So what did you think when they asked you to do a Comic-Con?
So I mean, when Chris and Neri, like my managers, reached out to me, I had no idea. It just was never even a thought to me. Like, oh, I was in a movie, maybe I could like go to Comic-Cons. Like, I don't know. I just never put those together. And I think when they reached out to me, I thought it was like a scam, or like, you know, I don't know. I was like, what? I'm gonna get paid to do what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. I just didn't even think it was a possibility. And then, you know, after meeting with them, and you know, Chris and Neri, they also manage 100 other voice actors, from the voice of Mickey Mouse to Goofy to Barney to, you know.
Oh wow! Continue on.
Poison Ivy to Tinkerbell, and like, you know, after I saw that they were like actually legit, it's just crazy that again that like I know like every time I go to a Comic-Con I always have this fear like no one's gonna come up and see me, no one likes Monsters Inc. anymore, like
wow.
Complete opposite, because just again we talked about in the beginning, just seeing like how it's impacted people, and it's just really special to be a part of it. But yeah, I mean the Comic-Cons are wild. Like I mean the craziest thing is just all the voice actors I get to meet, and I get to like sit in the green room with the Sons of Anarchy and freaking Tinkerbell on my left and like the biker gang on my right. Like, you know, I don't know. It's like it's been I got to like meet all the Disney princesses, and like I don't know. My favorite part is definitely the people I meet, not just the voice actors, but like the people that come up to my booth that I get to talk to. But yeah, it's really fun. I love Comic-Con stuff.
So
I've yet to dress up in cosplay yet, but next time.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because we've had several here on Purple Roads, Comic-Con actors and voiceover actors, and several of them were kind of in your situation. I mean, they weren't 2.5, but they weren't professional voiceover actors, and I think that's really fascinating, the authenticity of it.
wow.
Yeah. Sometimes you're looking for something so specifically that almost the imperfection of it is what makes it work so well.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, definitely.
What's can you think of an interaction with a fan that has really touched you?
I think the biggest was that the girl who said like, you know, she was struggling with depression, and using Monsters to kind of help her through it. There's this other couple that comes to mind, and I just remember them. They just like shared their life story, like how like hard of a time they were doing, and like that they were in, and remember I just gave them an autograph for free, you know, and I just seen like how much it touched them, and they came back to me like 5 times throughout the Comic-Con to like talk to me and like,
Oh.
yeah, just like, you know, it sounds like kind of conceited to say, I guess, but it's just like being able to make people's days, even if it's, you know, in that moment, and just like
Wow.
whether it's like me hugging them or for some reason makes big impact for them, you know, whatever it is, it's just like being able to connect with people. But yeah, like that one couple specifically, I think I'm still friends with them on Instagram. And like, yeah, that other girl. But there's been like a couple people like that where it's just like, you know, when you could really tell like what you're doing is it has an impact on them, and yeah.
Well, we talk about this on this show. I've talked about it. When I got into doing the Barney role, I had no idea. I was looking to get into the industry, and then next thing you know, you're impacting people, and it kind of changes your perspective because, yeah, we make a living, but also there's a responsibility to it that, you know, people are
Yeah, well,
affected by what you did.
Barney was my favorite. I'm trying to. I have this picture, but anyway. Wait, oh yeah, here it is. So this was me watching Barney. And I loved
Ooh, this is Barney and Ryan Barney's car. Okay, continue on.
so much that I went to a birthday party when I was little, and everyone was so excited, standing in line, and so I get so excited and I stand in line, and when I get to the front of the line, I start bawling because there's a Barney pinata, and everyone is
Jeez!
with a stick, and I lose it. But anyway, yeah, I love Barney. So yeah, it definitely impacted me. That's why when I said when I met like the voice of Barney, and even like meeting you, it was like the first people I was like, wow, I'm starstruck.
Wow.
And so was my mom and my dad, because and my dad actually drew Barney holding Boo, and wrote like Boo, and yeah, so that's around somewhere. Bob has that, and
Wow.
yeah. So again, just going off like how much it impacts people. Like years later, it's still, you know, you still have all those memories that it brings up. You know. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Absolutely. I told you we were just watching your movie not too long ago. And,
Wow.
And I mentioned my girlfriend was like, "Oh my gosh, you got to tell her hello." I just think this is so, you know, she's a grown woman, but she saw the effect that your character had on her kids, and so then that affects, and that's where all of this goes.
Wow.
I know people are going to be wondering. We got to talk a little bit about what you're doing now. What you've been doing since.
Okay. Yeah. So besides from that little like Heroes of Extinction, haven't been doing any voice acting, but I do like to be on the other side of the camera, and so I've been doing a lot of like filming. I love editing. I've been trying to get more into like 2D animation. I'm in school right now for kinesiology, and so the plan is to go on to physical therapy after that. In 2012, I had a 20 screws into 10-inch rods in my spine because of scoliosis, and but I saw after that like how powerful like movement and just staying active is to heal, and so I always wanted to kind of take that one step further and like learn more about physical therapy. So that's kind of the trajectory I'm on right now. So yeah, just school and filming, and I've been fire spinning recently.
Okay, all right. So you got to explain that a little bit more.
Can you see my? I just posted a video of it. Let's see. You can see my phone.
Wow. Whoa, that was that. Let me mute this in case. Mary Gibbs? Jeez, she was on fire! Anyway.
And it's traditionally a martial arts weapon that has it's like a rope with a knife at the end of it. This has a ball of fire on the end of it. That's been my quarantine project, learning how to spin fire.
Wow.
Was that on Instagram? We'll have to send people.
That was on Instagram. Yeah, it's Mary M Gibbs is my handle. Or whatever.
We will put the links and get people.
Watch it.
Wow.
Spin fire.
Absolutely. Well, this has been just such a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Well, you touched so many people.
Yeah.
And I presume once we get through COVID and the pandemic, you'll be out again doing the Comic-Cons?
Oh Yeah, I'll definitely be doing them again. You know, and when we thought the pandemic was getting better, there was one Comic-Con I did in Vegas. It was a horror Comic-Con, which horror fans are actually also Disney fans in a lot of ways. So that was
Well, like
was
me.
cool to be able to like get back in there for a little bit, and like yeah, of course everything's like shut down now, but yeah, I'll definitely be back out there once it's safe again.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. There's been a lot of memories running through my head of that movie, and I just think it's so cool to kind of hear the process. Well, thank you again, Mary, for being on the show.
My pleasure.
And thank you so much, Purple Rose fans. We'll see you next week, and remember to keep your eyes, ears, and your heart open, and you'll find your Purple Road.
So that was Purple Road, episode number 52. Mary Gibbs, Boo, Monsters Incorporated. What do I think about this episode? It was amazing. So far, this episode went to be a success. Anyways, guys, double episode for LJPCBM React. Episode 532. Hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for the next one, which is going to be Purple Road's episode number 53, Santa Claus. Although Christmas is already over, I'm still going to react to this. Until next time, so Joe's goodbye, peace out, baby. We get more to react to you guys very soon. Till then, Jump out. See ya.
Given unto me this life I'll never take for granted, and given all the time I failed to really understand it, I never sought to meet the maker of reality, the one who gave the life that which is always happening, but I tried all the time. I ask, why me? Why was I the one to see things as I do under the moonlight and the sun? Perception is the question, and the giver holds the key.